Welcome to Unveiled Radiance, podcast to help you strip away fear of aging. Hello, I'm Dr. Natalia, licensed naturopathic physician, aesthetic expert injector, and owner of Bloom Skincare. In each episode, we will discuss everything about skincare, strip away confusion about aesthetic medicine, and help you deeply understand what happens in your body as you start aging. We will invite expert opinion and, of course, science backed information to help you deeply understand you. This podcast is part of educational platform called Unveiled You, which I designed for women just like you to help you understand everything, not just about your skin, which is your largest body's organ, but everything that's happened to your body from puberty all the way through past menopause, and enjoy and embrace every stage of that beautiful life. Let's get started. I am Natalya Borakowski, and welcome to Unveiled Radiance. Hello, our dear listeners, and here we are again for the next episode of Unveiled Radiance podcast. And this episode is something I've been looking forward to for many, many months with my dear friend Hanna, who is soon to be a nurse practitioner. She's finishing up her master's degree. She is brilliant, very talented aesthetic injector nurse. I love her dearly. We've been friends for many years. But today we are going to talk about something that I call it behind needles. So this is a very dear episode to me. This is very sensitive episode. There's a lot of honesty. Hanna is so brave to share her own personal story. We will be talking about complications, but before we get into the whole nitty gritty, let me be absolutely clear. We're not here to scare anybody. We're not here to shame anyone who have done aesthetic injections. Let me be honest with you. I'm almost 50 years old. I have plenty of those injections in my face. What are we trying to do? We're trying to create awareness. Those drugs, either it's a dermal filler, hyaluronic acid fillers, Botox, neurotoxins, they are not bad tools. They are tools with a reason. There's a tools with intention. And when they are applied correctly, they can create beautiful changes. But when they are abused, when they are injected inappropriately, when they lead to complications, that can lead to dire consequences. And that's essentially what we are going to talk about. So hang tight. Listen to us. This is a little bit of a tear-dropping episode, and hopefully you learn something. And first, we're not teaching fear. We're not shaming anyone. We're teaching love. We're teaching you to have an honest reflection with your own face, to have an open conversation with your injector, and make those decisions from a point of empowerment, not from the point of fear. Because I always try to tell women, we are not broken dolls. We don't need a fix. What we need is just a little bit more self-love. So Hanna, let's start with honesty. Tell me,
Yes.
how did you end up in that emotional state that you are now? How did everything shifted for you?
Yes. So a little backstory. I have always been so hardcore believer in filler, filler, filler. I mean, it gets placed into our laps. I would say about 2018, 19, everyone was very on board with, oh, you have a little line, there's a fix for that, and it is filler. And you just keep adding it, no big deal. You can get rid of it. You can change your look as you please with whatever mood you're in that day, and it came across as very just like it's no big deal. So, of course, when I started to get into it, I injected a lot of patients and had some phenomenal results, like just beautiful outcomes to where patients were crying out of happiness. And I think that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm helping so many women, specifically women, because that's what my passion is for with enhancements. But I would see the joy in their face and the change in their confidence and the way that they carried themselves. That to me, I was fully sold on the aesthetic industry and everything that we can do with filler. hindsight, about 2022, I had a personal complication with filler, and it was underneath my eye. And I got almost like a chronic swelling, a lot of pain to where it was a constant pain, almost as if something was poking my eye at all times. And I was impulsive at that point because I had never experienced any complication in my life. So we always think, oh, because it's filler, it can easily be taken out. In my personal experience, I used a product called Bellafill, which is for collagen stimulation, and unfortunately, you can't dissolve. So I went to have a surgical procedure to remove it. And when I woke up from surgery, a lot of things were shifted around in my face that I didn't realize were going to be done. And that was very traumatic. It's almost like you go in thinking you're going to have something done and come out with something else done. And unfortunately, you just can't take that back. What's done is done. And I was absolutely devastated. I cried almost every single night to when I woke up. I was working 7 days a week, so I would actually see patients. And then in between patients, I would go to the bathroom, cry, wipe my tears. No one knew I was suffering. I was in a very dark place. And I think whenever I had a transition, almost like an aha moment, that I don't want to speak poorly on filler. Like Natalia said, we support filler fully, and filler is a tool, and that's what it should be used for. It's not the answer for everything. But I had an aha moment that made me realize, okay, I'm going about this the wrong way, because in my dark place, I realized that I personally identified with the way that I looked. Like that's how I placed my value. And for it to be such a life altering, event in my life that most people would have looked at me and been like, you look fine. Like, why are you crying? Like, your distress makes no sense. This is a psych thing. But to me, it ended up being something so much deeper that in my mind, if I experienced this, then I'm surely not the only person who is placing all of my worth and my identity in my looks, and I think that's something, especially with young patients, because I do deal with majority of, I would say, anywhere from 22 to 35. And once in a while, I'll get a mom in my chair. And that comes with a lot of responsibility because, like myself, I started getting injected after I had my daughter. I breastfed for a long time and I got very thin in my face. And that's when I even started thinking about the concept of filling in order to replace that volume. And I think one thing that is important whenever we're getting injections is we have to consider, okay, what is the purpose behind why we're doing it? And I think I didn't really have a clear purpose. You see some improvement, you get that instant like confidence that I saw in some of my patients, which made me fall in love with the industry. And it becomes addictive like anything else. I mean, it's that feeling, I guess, a hit of dopamine that you get from feeling better, maybe more approachable. Maybe you're making more eye contact with people, and you don't want that feeling to go away. And I personally was working a lot. Natalia can attest to this. I was working about 7 days a week at that point. I hardly saw my family. I just became obsessed in my work to where if I woke up one day looking tired, I was like, oh my God, like I don't have time for this. I'm just going to go get injected rather than actually taking care of myself, which is something I think a lot of people do, especially in our culture today that's so just go, go, go. We don't have time to rest. We don't have time for naps. We need to work, make money, and there's little quick fixes for if you look tired, which is, I think, something that has needed to shift within the industry so people understand what it truly is.
Yes, and that's such a powerful share, Hannah, because ultimately, I think many women listening to this episode right now is agreeing with you because we've all been there. Because unfortunately, what society taught to us since we are little girls that our worth lies in our external presence, right? So how pretty we are, the prettier we are, more valuable we are. The younger we are, or looking more younger, the more valuable you are to society. And that also doesn't mean that as you start to age, you stop taking care of yourself.
A
So there's
hundred percent.
another end of the coin, or sort of like a thing that our industry is going through right now. We call it the filler phobia. So even patients who have a beautiful results with filler, they want to dissolve all of this because now we're all terrified of filler. So that's another like pendulum swing of the beauty industry when now the filler is an
Absolutely.
evil substance. But the truth and the reality is the filler is just a tool. And it's exactly as you said, it all depends. What are you trying to achieve with the tool? So if you are
100%.
seeking a syringe as that temporary dopamine boost, that's when it becomes addiction, and that's when it becomes a destruction to both injector and the patient. And it's something that we
100%.
should be very aware of, and we should talk to us as a practitioners to our patients about it. And as patients, women, friends, sisters, we need to talk to another woman if we're seeing her drifting too far from the reality because she forgot what is the normalcy looks like. Then we should have that deep honest conversation of care, not shame, not fear, but care, to help her to get back into her own body, essentially.
100%. And that's a tough conversation to have with people because, especially if they don't see it, I can actually say that happened to me. My husband told me, he's like, you got to be careful with filler because what are you going to look like when you're 50? Like, no more. Like, you're stunning. Stop. And, there are certain types of people you can tell them something and they listen. There are other types who just have to learn their own way. And I thought it came from a place of jealousy, like, like you just, that's what you think at some point, and then you look back and you're like, actually, no, he was just actually giving me good advice that I did not take. And something interesting that you said about society, there's an interesting analogy that I came across the other day, and I'm like, this is something probably men and women both experience, but think about like a cockroach and a butterfly, right? So why is it so acceptable to squish a cockroach? In fact, it's like, oh my gosh, kill it. And then a butterfly, it's like sacred, like, oh, we don't touch it. That we even have like the butterfly museum, do not step on them, you be careful. And I thought about that and I'm like, that is interesting. Why has society made that acceptable? Because they're both insects, right? They both serve a purpose, yet one is more valuable because of its aesthetic appearance, and the other is considered gross if we don't want that around. And as simple as that analogy is, it kind of gets to the root of what people call pretty privilege, which is unfortunate thing that women do have to deal with regardless of whatever stance they take. And I can see where it's difficult for people who do start to get overdone. And I think kind of going back to what you said with doing it with grace and empathy and kindness and love, we have to have that understanding that it is hard to navigate how to approach what's really going on, because you also can't be blind to the fact that people do care about that. But
Yes.
like you said, you don't stop taking care of yourself. It's almost like working out, it's not necessarily because you want to be super skinny. It's more or less because you want to love yourself and your body and you want to feed it healthy things. You want to take care of it. Same with skin. I mean, I think there's just a level of at what point did you cross taking care of yourself and go into addiction or obsession?
Yes, I mean, you're right. And it's a very, very powerful shift. And it's a internal shift that one should just realize themselves. And it's very difficult to help someone realize it when they're completely deaf to it. So if they are at the point of destruction, either it is a body dysmorphia, as like, some women that starve themselves to unbelievable sickness of being as skinny as possible, and then there's the opposite of men who become so intoxicated by injecting themselves with a bunch of different steroids because they cannot be big enough. Those are severe forms of body dysmorphia, but more so minor, like mildly detected cases of it present into, I would argue, a majority of us. So we do want to look good, because
Yeah,
when we look good, it does make us feel more empowered. It makes us feel more confident. And the dopamine, which is the hormone of confidence, or a neurotransmitter of confidence, I'm sorry, it's a very powerful feeling. That's the reason why most of us, addicted to social media, because getting those likes give you that dopamine boost, right? It is great to have a supportive friend, a supportive platform that kind of helps to create alertness in your own brain to think, how do I take care of myself? Why do I make those choices? Do I go to the gym, as you said, because I want to have a healthy body and I want to live strong life and fight my muscle atrophy, bone atrophy, which is inevitable because we all age. No matter how hard you try, we still age. Nobody gets out of this life alive. And
yeah,
if you do aesthetic treatments, do you do it again from the point of preserving your body, preserving your skin? instead of trying to pretend like you're going to be 20 forever, because nobody's going to be 20 forever. And
No.
if you're chasing this unachievable image, even of yourself when you were 20, that's when you're more likely to run into complications, because you're chasing something that just will never exist. So I guess that kind of draws me into a next question. It's a deep philosophical discussion of a word, perfect, because I know it goes into the name of your own practice, which is called Flawless
Yes.
Love, which I absolutely love. I think it's a genius name. But tell me, what is the meaning to you of being perfect now compared to just a few years ago?
Yeah, that's a deep question. Before, it was absolutely all outward. I mean, that was completely what we focused on. How can we give you the contour you want? How can we lift your brows, make your eyes look brighter, more awake? I mean, now my interpretation of flawless is so much different. It's difficult because it's hard to incorporate into the practice other ways of being quote unquote flawless. But truly, when I do a consult with a patient now, my approach is completely different. I'm very picky about who I'll inject now because I feel from my experience that I want to protect others from maybe making choices that they don't fully understand why they're making either. And when I'm assessing a face, especially somebody young, if there is a true bony deficiency, I mean, we've all seen a short chin, no amount of working out, no amount of skincare could bring that forward. And maybe that's something that truly has bothered them their entire life. I would be okay with injecting for that reason. Like if I'm like, okay, I can see a true deficiency, I could see where this would actually benefit this patient's confidence. Now, when I have another patient come in who is nothing wrong with them, they're unique, they're beautiful. Honestly, I look at them and I see them as like a daughter or just like I feel I need to protect them, then I'll say, I'll go into the psyche of why they're doing it to an extent. And if I feel that the decision that they're making isn't in line with my beliefs, then I won't inject them. And I'm very honest with them because I want them to have self-love and self-acceptance. And I think that's what I would say I've transitioned to how I view flawless. And I think it goes back to my old identification used to be strictly with my exterior, shell that I'm in, if you will. And now I identify so differently. Like you said, it's great to feel great on the outside, and that's why we do what we do. We want to give women confidence, but at the same time, it's just a piece of the puzzle. To be truly flawless is so much deeper. I think the exterior is really just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. But everything else underneath is what really makes you beautiful. And we've all seen it. I mean, you can see a light in someone's eyes when they're truly happy. The eyes don't lie. I mean, I can see beautiful women who I see sadness when I look in their eyes, and it's something that can't be bought. It takes a lot of work. It's like filler and aesthetic procedures, whether it's surgery, injections, you name it. Honestly, it's easy, right? But self-work and self-love is actually, it's hard and so much easier to distract yourself and do little things to keep you going. But eventually, I think in everyone's life, we all get humbled in one way or the other to where we have to look in the mirror and face our demons with whatever that may be. And it's going to be different for every person. But true, flawless look or beauty, in my opinion, is really number one from within. And then the exterior is after, because we can always do things to feel better about ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that as long as it's done appropriately, safely, and it's something that we both, patient and provider, agree is appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. I cannot agree more. Ultimately, I do support that. I just want to reiterate to help women to understand, to pause, to have that deep reflection and their own image in the mirror and ask yourself, what makes you feel beautiful is you are of who you are, because we are all uniquely beautiful. If you're trying to create image of someone else's face on your face or your body, it will never lead to positive outcome. You're more likely to disfigure yourself. And ultimately, every unique asymmetry, every unique little flaw, if you will, I would argue actually makes the face uniquely beautiful, because that's what really adds to that kind of a charisma. That's what we intuitively
Yeah,
get attracted to, because a perfectly polished, symmetrical faces, they almost look alienated and become sort of less attractive. Specifically, if
a
we are,
100%.
as women, doing it for the purpose of attracting opposite sex, so most men will get repelled by a woman who is too overdone. She becomes unapproachable and sort of like intimidated to talk to. So
Yeah,
being more
absolutely.
warm, more real, ultimately creates more of a deeper human connection. And that's something we need to remind ourselves. And ultimately, everything starts with your own self love. Very over abused word, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people become very deaf to it because there's just so much on social media, or self love this, self love that. But if you don't start with the self love, nothing else will really build on top of that. And it's just, you really cannot borrow love from someone else. This is the biggest mistake you can make in your life, when you think that something else can make you experience love. You should really get it from within.
And when you have self-love, it shows in everyday actions, You're going to choose your food differently. You're going to choose friends differently, the things that you're doing outside of your house differently, what you watch on TV, the music you listen to. I mean, it all goes back to self-love if you think
Absolutely.
about it.
And ultimately, I would even argue, or once you truly love yourself, that's when you're capable of experiencing true love to someone else. Either it's a man in your life, we're talking about women, or as a mother to deeply love your children. You really need to start deeply loving yourself and accepting yourself for what you are. And that way, you can radiate that love to everyone else. So I want to kind of like a little bit shift gears and talk about something that you and I briefly start talking about when we were sharing a couple cocktails a few weeks ago. And it came up with the idea and finally solidified date of doing this
Yeah,
recording in
that
the
was our
first place.
self-love moment.
That was our self-love moment. But what I wanted to say, it's kind of expand what you mentioned. You do treat mainly young patients, right? So your patients at that mid 20s, mid 30s level. And what you said is your realization how using the cosmetic interventions at a young age often can lead to adverse events later. Can you kind of expand on that to really
Absolutely.
help young girls who are considering injectables in their 20s to understand the implications further on?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we have to think about it. We still see people walking around with silicone in their face. So, truly aesthetic treatments are fairly new. I mean, although, yes, there's years and years of data, it's still fairly new to where when we used to inject people's faces, we used to think, oh, you can take it out. Now, with ultrasound, we know better. And we're like, okay, filler's actually lasting a lot longer than we once anticipated that it lasted. We were always told as providers, and I mean, you can't look at your provider and blame them because we're all kind of learning together, and we do go off of what the company tells us, and we trust that to be true. And unfortunately, sometimes in any form of medicine, whether it's aesthetics, any medical procedure, it's trial and error, unfortunately. And we are finding that fillers lasting significantly longer than we once thought. Also, we see the repercussions of injecting too superficial. I mean, your lymphatics are what pumps out all the toxins in your body that we hold on to. It's the way that we can get blood flow to our face to where you get that like bright looking skin to where it's not dull. I mean, your body needs that lymphatic system to function well. And unfortunately, it's the only system in the body, maybe not the only system, because sometimes nerves don't fully repair, but it is one of those ones to where once you have damaged your lymphatics, you cannot create a new chain, you cannot create a new pump. So what's done is done. And what we're finding is when people have too much filler overloaded in that superficial fat pad, the lymphatics get blocked up. And even when you dissolve, it is very, very difficult to fully get rid of it to where they go back to functioning as they normally would. And you're very lucky if it ever does. So it's something that I consider when I'm injecting a younger face. So, of course, proper depth is important. I do not inject superficially at all. I do have one area that I do, and that's pretty much it. And then you also have to think the face is changing. So, again, what you look like in your 20s is not what you're going to look like in your 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, especially as women, we have bone loss more so than men. Our tissue thins, we have muscle atrophy, we have fat loss. So things are going to shift to where what looks good when injected in your 20s may not look good in your 40s. So that's why I'm very selective now at this point in my career to where I'm thinking, okay, not how is it going to look right after in the picture or as you go out in the world and present yourself, but what is this going to look like 10 years, down the road? And is it still going to be an appropriate placement or appropriate form of injection or product that I selected? And that has made me step back and really think about the why behind when I'm doing something as opposed to just doing whatever the patient is requesting because patients don't know what they don't know, but we as providers, we know better and we know how the face ages and we know the repercussions of overdoing it. And unfortunately, like we spoke about earlier, a lot of times when you are making changes, you're not doing it drastically in one session. It's little bits and pieces that you're building upon to where one day, and I personally experienced this with myself, and I don't want anyone to ever experience this, is you think you're still looking like yourself, but then one day you wake up and you're like, I don't really recognize myself anymore, to where it's a hard place to be in because instantly you jump to blame. Why did my provider not tell me? Why did my husband let me do this? Why did my friends not tell me? But the reality is, it is all within. Us as providers, we have to be responsible, and that's where saying no and suggesting other avenues or other treatments in conjunction to mitigate the amount of filler at such a young age is important. But I think at the end of the day, never getting to that point is ideal. So that's where us as providers, it's important to teach, and you as a patient, it's important to practice self-love, self-worth to where maybe you don't have the need to alter yourself constantly. Because usually, I think when people are making extreme changes, there's something deeper that they aren't addressing or they don't want to look at without them knowing it.
Yes, absolutely, especially in the younger phases. I think that conversation is extremely important. And most importantly, in my personal practice, I would say majority of young patients like under age of 35, I tell them no. It's really
Yeah,
rarely I will inject a young face. Exceptions probably would be, and you would agree with me, I know, will be lips and chin because I
yeah,
understand, like I can see indication if the younger girl has really thin lips and she's very self-conscious about it. Certainly we can do lip filler very conservatively so it looks natural. It does not look like it's something was injected once it's all heals. And that's the ultimate goal. The goal is it's to make that filler undetectable. Because if it does
absolutely.
create a beautiful aesthetic result, but it doesn't look like it was done, then this is ultimately what we are after. And if the patient is seeking more of a drastic change, like either let's talk about noses or even jawlines, chin, when there is a significant bone deficiency, also getting an opinion from a plastic surgeon, it also could be a really good idea because if you continue just injecting filler, and the filler is a piece of jelly, and this is sort of like your ultimate strategy to changing the shape of your face, sometimes you can also backfire and then create, like you said, the poor lymphatic drainage, swelling, the shift of that filler, because the filler ultimately is a piece of jelly, so it is not a solid implant. So even with the best injection, when it's too much injected, it can squish into the areas where it really did not intend to go, because the body, the face is a living structure, it's all mobile. It's not like we are injected on the bone and it's cemented on it and it's just impossible to move it. Yes, there's areas on your face it's less likely to move, but ultimately, again, it's not like it's an implant that's been drilled to the bone and now it's going to stay. Even with that, I would say I've seen patients who would have a chin implant placed in their late teens, early 20s. And by the time I see them in their mid 40s, the implant actually shifted because the bone
Yeah,
changed, your bone remodeled. Our body is not static,
yeah,
you have to
yeah.
embrace the fact that we are constantly morphing, we're constantly changing into a new form of you. Again, like if we're talking about insects, right? So think about yourself as a beautiful butterfly. You're going through different transitions in life, like every hormonal shift you're experiencing as a woman, either it's, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and then perimenopause, you're going to emerge in the other end as a different woman. You're not going to be same. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Those transitions are wonderful. It's one of the
Yeah.
greatest things of being a woman. So I guess I want to finish this whole conversation again, not to try to scare everyone, not to try to say the filler's terrible or we're against it, because we're not. We're still injecting filler. I have a filler in my face. I know Hannah does too. So ultimately, it's a beautiful tool. I want to ask you this important question. So, what gives you hope for the aesthetic industry? Where do you think we're all heading to?
I think kind of you'd mentioned this in the beginning, how now everyone has filler phobia, which isn't appropriate either, because we've mentioned it's a tool, it's great when done appropriately, but it's good to see that people are aware of the damage that can be done. I guess if it's not done in respect to your own anatomy or appropriately in the way that it was intended to be used. So I think I have hope that people are starting to understand that. People are starting to understand the importance of internal health. I mean, we're seeing peptides galore now, which is like a whole nother topic, but it's just people are starting to understand that it's a lot more than band-aiding in order to reach that ultimate best version of you, if you will. Once you start doing the other things and incorporating that into your lifestyle, you're going to do it significantly less. I'll just say that. I'm like, that's probably the least of your priorities. You will want to still probably make small adjustments and tweaks here and there, but it's not going to be altering to the fact that you're unrecognizable or causing yourself harm or damage.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And that gives me hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think our job is to really help to educate our patients. That's the best we can do, right? We can just
Always, yeah,
approach all their concerns with sort of, compassion and care. We want to help them understand that we are here to hear them out. We understand the struggles
absolutely.
because we're women too. We have our own insecurities and sort of imperfections we're trying to chase. It is difficult to age for a woman in this society. I mean, we want to stay as young, as flawless, if you will, forever. But ultimately, I think it's important to give that emotional support for every woman that come to our clinic, and to also give it to our listeners here. Love yourself and celebrate every transition, every stage of your life. And if you choose to do aesthetic treatments, approach them with the really wise decision of thinking, why am I doing this? What am I chasing? Is this helping me to evolve and transition through different stages of my life? Or do I try to mask something? Because if I'm masking, if I'm hiding, if I'm trying to be pretending someone I'm not, then you probably should step back and reconsider.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And though, like another side to it that I see is it is a way of expressing yourself because there are some people who are born a certain way, but like they feel their outside doesn't match their essence. And that way I can see where changing can give you more like confidence and you feel more like you. Yeah.
Yeah, that I can understand and support as well. Absolutely. All right, my dear. Well, I think it was absolutely wonderful conversation. I think we covered very sensitive, very important topic. So before we finish up, what would you like to tell our listeners? What will be the most important takeaway?
Oh gosh. I think the most important takeaway is, it's tough, Natalia, because I want to say, like, when you do choose to go to aesthetic treatments, go to somebody who has your best interest and who you can trust. But that's hard to navigate, right? Like, wouldn't you say it's hard to distinguish between what's true, what's not, especially with social media? I mean, they're the medical professional. I guess my biggest thing that I would tell my sister, my daughter, my best friend is learn to be resourceful. That when somebody tells you something, because it's very easy for someone to say, like, oh, you know what? If you do your mid face, that would look great on you. And you go home and you're like, oh, yeah, like I could see that. And then you just go do it. But maybe become resourceful to where you have an understanding for, I guess, what that could mean for you. I mean, because not every practitioner is going to look at you and say like, oh, let me think about what this could do to her in 10 years. I mean, realistically, it's very few and far between. to find providers who have that thought process behind why they do what they do. I mean, I didn't used to have it until I had a bad experience. Now I'm like, okay, I've completely changed the way I practice. So in a way, it's a blessing. But I think as a consumer with anything, whether it's injections, food that you're eating, things that you're drinking, learn to be resourceful and always question the why behind anything that you're doing. And then I think as long as you're not making impulsive decisions and you're making sound decisions that are logical and you decide you still want to go through with it, then you mitigate the risk.
Yes, I think that's a very important thing to also, again, not to scare anybody, but to really understand the implications. All the aesthetic procedures, you're not trying on lipstick or a mascara. They are medical procedures. So let's start with that. So there should
Yes,
always be indications. Is there a true medical indication for what you are asking your provider to do? And ultimately, if you chose the provider, you check the credentials, you check the before and afters, you did your homework, looked at their reviews or whatever other homework you've done, you chose the provider, then trust your provider's decision. So don't go to the provider and say, I want Juvederm on your lips. Perhaps the Juvederm will be a really
absolutely.
poor idea for you because your provider,
Yes,
like Hannah and I both, and I can attest to it, we've spent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on postgraduate education and continue learning because the aesthetic industry is evolving industry, it's still very young. There's so much we still don't know, and then we discover new things every time. So our job is to always deliver the safest result to our patients. So when your provider tells you
absolutely.
this is a better option, if you trust the provider, then go with their advice. Don't go with the Instagram picture and say, like, my friend had this, I want to get this. This is not as easy as trying a new dress. It's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So it was a lovely conversation. I really enjoy you
Yes.
and I really appreciate you coming to this podcast. If anybody wants to find Hannah, we're going to post all her information in a link below. You can see she is in Scottsdale. She is my neighbor here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Flavolous Love is her practice. And thank you so much for listening, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you, Natalia.
All right. Bye. Thank you for joining me on Unveiled Radiance. If this episode resonates with you, please share with someone you love, with another woman who might need to hear this information. And for full experience, head to unveilu.life, where we share everything about skin, hormones, and even self-confidence. Until the next time, thank you for joining me, and please take care of yourself from inside and out.